Shalom, shalom. Giving honor and praise to the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. My name is Yeshiah of the tribe of Dan of the nation of Israel. This particular teaching not going to be very long. We call it Teaching Deuteronomy 28, Part 1, or How to Teach Deuteronomy 28, Part 1. Now, this is no way in any shape, form, or fashion a disrespect intended to anybody. However, the theories, ideologies that many hold will be addressed in this particular case and in this particular aspect. If you look right here, brothers and sisters, at Deuteronomy 28, verse 65, it says the following: And among these nations thou shalt have no repose, and there shall be no rest for the sole of your foot. But the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and languishing of soul. The Hebrew says this: Uba goyim hahem, lo taragia, walo yihye manoach lakaf raglaka. Wanatan yorewahi laka sham, leb ragaz, wakilyon enayim, wada'abon nafesh. Now, what is to be pointed out, brothers and sisters, is that verse 65 says, among these nations. Yet there are those who attempt to state, brothers and sisters, that Deuteronomy 28, from verse 48 all the way to verse 68, is only about the Israelites and the Romans. Now, if that were the case, then how can this then say among these nations? All right? Because it wasn't only about the Israelites and the Romans. That's why. Let's go on, brothers and sisters. What you're seeing on the left-hand side is a depiction of those who have no rest for the sole of their foot. Trembling heart and failing of eyes and languishing of soul. Being scared and so forth and so on. Next slide. Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, part 2. In order to understand Deuteronomy 28, certain things has to be noted. What is a conjecture? What is prophecy? Why history is important? And what to do about naysayers. Deuteronomy 28 distinctly says it, the curses, shall be a sign upon you and upon in your seed. Seed is physical. There is no spiritual Israel. See, Christianity trying to explain Deuteronomy 28, while Christianity does not uphold the God that Deuteronomy 28 speaks on, one has to begin to sit back and wonder, how can such be the case? The God of Israel is not supported in Christianity, yet it is the Most High, who is the God that is being spoken of in Deuteronomy chapter 28. When you read in Deuteronomy 28, the Lord your God, the God that is talking about is the Most High. The Most High is not respected in the doctrine and religion of Christianity. Therefore, it is frivolous for a Christian, one who does not uphold the laws of the Most High God, to try to sit there and expound upon a prophecy that will be left if the people did not keep the laws of the Most High. Next slide. Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, part 3. As Moreh Yeshiah, which is myself, pointed out in his book, Egypt Talk and Writing, the portion of Deuteronomy 28, verse 68 starts with the word and. Thus, we have to read before it to understand what is going on. Here is a quick explanation on the matter. Sentence structure. And the Lord shall bring thee back into Egypt in ships, by the way whereof I said unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there you shall sell yourselves unto your enemies, for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Conjuncture, joins, clauses, or sentences or words. This means we have to read before verse 68, before the 68th verse to get an understanding. So, brothers and sisters, Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, all right, it starts with the word and, as we see right here. All right. So, since that is the case, we have to read before that to understand what is going on, because the conjuncture joins clauses or sentences or words. You just can't start at Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, and then gain everything from that point. Let's go on to the next part. Deuteronomy 28, verse 67 through verse 68. In the morning thou shalt say, would it were even, and at even thou shalt say, would it were morning. For the fear of thy heart which thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. And the Lord shall bring thee back into Egypt in ships, by the way whereof I said unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there you shall sell yourselves unto your enemies, for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Brothers and sisters, something we want to point out for edification purposes is this. In the morning you shall say, would it were even, and at even you shall say, would it were morning, for the fear of thy heart which thou shalt fear. Now let's stop right there and go back, if we will, to verse 65. All right? And among these nations thou shalt have no repose, and there shall be no rest for the sole of your foot. But the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and languishing of soul. Trembling heart. Your heart trembles, brothers and sisters, when you are in fear. So when you're in fear and you have no rest for the sole of your foot, you are going to say at even, you wish it was morning, and at morning, you wish it was even. For the fear of thy heart which thou shalt fear, and for the sight of thine eyes which thou shalt see. Next slide. Deuteronomy 28, verse 58 to verse 59. If you will not observe to do all the words of this law that are written in this book, that thou mayest fear this glorious and awful name, Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh Elohim, then Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh, the Lord, the Most High, will make thy plagues wonderful, and the plagues of thy seed, even great plagues, and of long continuance, and sore sicknesses, and of long continuance. What's being stated right here, brothers and sisters, is this. Let's go back. In order to understand Deuteronomy 28, certain things has to be noted. What is a conjuncture? We went over that. What is prophecy? Why history is important. Okay, so now let's see what is prophecy, right? It says, if you wilt not observe to do all the words of this law that are written in this book, that thou mayest fear this glorious and awful name, the Lord thy God, then the Lord will. Let's stop right there. See, when you read right here, brothers and sisters, where it says will, that means shall. That's future tense. That's prophecy. Then Yah will make thy plagues wonderful, and the plagues of thy seed, even great plagues, and of long continuance, and sore sicknesses, and of long continuance. So this is something, brothers and sisters, we want to point out for edification purposes. All right, next slide. Deuteronomy 28 notes. If it can be used as a conjunction to bring two clauses together. If we look at Deuteronomy 28, verse 58 to verse 68, all but verse 67 starts with the word and. Thus, we should see that it is all connected. Deuteronomy 28, verse 45 says, and all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou didst not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. So right here, it says what? All these curses shall, meaning future tense prophecy. And then it gives you the reason why the curses were going to be coming upon the house of Israel. There are those who like to say that Deuteronomy 28, verse 48 to verse 68 is strictly speaking on the matter of the Israelites and the Romans. Yet, as this presentation will show, such is not the case. Mostly, it is whites who say such or blacks who think others don't read. Next slide. The verbs of Deuteronomy 28, verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee back into Egypt in ships, by the way whereof I said unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there you shall sell yourselves unto your enemies, for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Waheshivka Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh Mitzrayim, Ba'aniyot, Ba'derek Asher Amorti Laka, Lo Tosif O Lir Ota, Wahit Makartem Sham Oibeka, La Abadin Wa Lishfakot Wa Ein Kone. So let's look at this part, the verbs, right here, highlighted in the black. All the parts in the Hebrew that you see here on the right-hand side, highlighted in the black are the verbs. Heshib, Tosif, Lir Ot, Hit Makartem, Quone. Heshib means to restore. Where Heshib ka, Yod He Wah He Mitzrayim. Now we're going to explain this Mizrayim as we go along, all right, as we've done in the past. But aniyot is a verb. But derek, that shows you a direction, a path, all right. Asher, which, amorti, I said, that should be highlighted too because that's a verb. All right, laka, lo tosif od, lo tosif od. It comes from the Hebrew word hethif, which means to add or to increase. Okay, so what was not supposed to have been added for it to be seen again? This old right here means again. Lil ota, to see it or to see her again. What will the Israelites not supposed to see again? Let's go on. Wahit makartem, and you shall devote yourselves, or you shall sell yourselves. Now let's look at this. This while right here shows, brothers and sisters, as the while consecutive. That means this normally ending in the second person masculine singular past tense with the while consecutive in biblical Hebrew and makes it the future. This hey and tau that you see here serves as the prefix of the hitpael stem. Then we got the mem, the kaf, and the resh. Mem, kaf, and resh means to sell or to devote. This tau with the segol and then the mem so feet shows it, brothers and sisters, to be the past tense. Well, heat makoratem. This right here serves as the suffix. This is the verb. This heat shows as the prefix. And this is like you may say another aspect of the prefix because in Hebrew, and is part of the word. And you in Hebrew is wa'ata, for instance. So it's not wa'ata. All right. So that's something we want to point out for edification purposes. Now, what heat makoratem means you shall sell yourselves or devote yourselves. This is why we don't read the translation as read as the King James and many others, where it says, you shall be sold. It more so means you will sell yourselves. You'll devote yourselves. All right. Now, when you go, brothers and sisters, in your own time to the book of 2 Kings 17, it says that the children of Israel gave themselves over or sold themselves over to mischief. So that's something we want to point out for edification purposes. Why do I keep on going periodically again and again and again and again over this? Because when we speak upon this, as stated earlier, I want to state this. Mostly it is whites who say such or blacks who think others don't read. I have been told, oh, you don't read this, you don't read that. How you going to sit there and tell a man what he reads or don't read? Unless you're already trying to sit there and think for that man. You understand? So this is something, brothers and sisters, we want to point out in that particular regard. Let's understand this. If this right here, heshib, which is a he-filled verb stem from the word shab, which means to shab meaning to return, and heshib means to restore. So what was going to be restored was the thing that they were not supposed to see again. And this is what we're talking about, Mizraim. So let's explain what that Mizraim is as we go along. The explanation of the verbs. Heshib, the word heshib from shab, shab means en route to return. The word heshib means to restore, and you see the source there. Tosif, the word tosif from yasaf. Yasaf means en route to add. That's what the word yasaf means, to add. The word tosif means to add or to increase. Next slide. The explanation of the verbs, part 2. Lir ota, lir ot. The infinitive meaning to see, coming from the root word that is ra'ah, rir ota, to see it or to see her. What is it? The captivity. The captivity is what they were not supposed to see again. Let's understand, when the Most High stated that he is he who brought Israel out of the land of Mizraim, out of the house of bondage. Solomon described Mizraim, brothers and sisters, as the iron furnace when you go in the book of 1 Kings chapter 8. So it's not too hard to figure out that the Israelites here in Mizraim had an understanding of it being the barzel, the iron. You understand, like the iron furnace, or the aspect, brothers and sisters, of Beit Abadim, or the house of bondage. So looking at it like that, you would have the Jewish people, or those who want to be, quote unquote, against who they call the black Israelites, all right, trying to sit there and say, oh, that's the only source that you have? Well, I have to ask you all, because remember, we're dealing with the naysayers in this particular presentation as well. I have to ask you, what do you have as your source? What books are you citing? What sources are you citing? Or are you a Jewish person who don't believe in Jesus Christ? While the black Christians who believe in Jesus as their Lord and Savior is citing Jewish people who don't believe in Jesus against the black Israelites, as they call black Israelites. You understand? There are black people who believe in Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, who are citing Jewish people concerning Deuteronomy 28 against the black Israelites, as they call black Israelites. Black Christian and European Jew, y'all don't believe the same way. Whereas once it comes down to Israelites, you already know whether so-called messianic or so-called non-messianic, we already understand where the distinction comes into play at. You have those who are quote unquote non-messianic, such as myself, who's able to explain a point, not having to sit there and go quote unquote outside of my particular belief and faith and understanding to the quote unquote other side to bring something in. Why do I go there? Because the unity between the European Jews who don't believe in Jesus and the unity between them and the black Christians is that neither one respect who they call the black Israelites. So even though they all believe in certain things and don't believe in certain things in uniformity, such as Jesus Christ, they do believe that the black man is a Hamite. They do believe that the black man should not sit there and say that he's the chosen son of the Most High God. You understand? So they have a pact or a uniform unit together between themselves, European Jews and the black Christians. That's why I make these kind of videos. You understand? Showing the Hebrew, being a so-called black, who I understand myself as an Israelite, getting into the Hebrew, where the Jewish people, if they see this, they do not contest it. Where the Christians who at one time, the black Christians, quote unquote, at one time, had to try to sit there when I did a presentation before, go in the background, try to sit there and talk behind me, behind my back in the presentation, and realize after I saw what was stated, had to say, Moreh, 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 Moreh. Hold on, Moreh. You was calling me the Moreh. I didn't call you the Moreh, my brother. You understand? Because you got to cite European Jews in order to sit there to get your stance across, knowing good and well y'all will sit there and argue and tear each other's head off concerning Jesus Christ. That's the distinction in this. See, the Lord thy God that you read of in Deuteronomy 28 is not Jesus Christ. The Lord that thy God that you read of in Deuteronomy 28 is not Adoshem Elokeinu that the European Jews call upon. So Jesus Christ, nor Adoshem Elokeinu, is not the Lord thy God that Deuteronomy 28 is talking about. So if you do not serve the Most High, Yod Hey Wad Hey, the Most High, the creator and maker of heaven and earth, you really have no right or stance to talk on his prophecy. It says, what have the wicked to declare my statutes? In Psalm 50. So if you don't believe and call upon and have faith in, not that anybody is perfect, but if you denounce the Most High by calling his word the Old Testament, if you denounce the Most High, like European Jews have done, saying that God is at fault for the Holocaust under Hitler, you really have no right to speak upon this subject. No more than I, as a said black man, have the right to tell a Chinese man that they should get over the oppressor with the Japanese. So if the white people who tell black people that I, as a white guy, have nothing to do with slavery, then you really don't have a right to tell the black man when he should get over a subject matter, when he should not care about a subject matter. Because according to you, you have nothing to do with slavery. So if you don't have nothing to do with slavery, then you should sit there and be silent when those who talk about it. Just as much as I, as a said black man, have nothing to do with the oppression as the oppressor or the oppressed concerning the Chinese and the Japanese. I need to shut my mouth concerning that, telling the Chinese how they should react to it. Because I'm not Chinese. Know where you fit in that. So this is what we want to point out for edification purposes. Now, let's look at this part right here. Heat markotaten, a verb of the hipael stem, meaning to sell oneself or to devote oneself. The root of such is the word markar, meaning to sell. And you can see where we got the source from. Next slide. The explanation of the verbs, part 3. Quone, from the root word quana, meaning to buy. Many say the Israelites are incorrect when we say that quana also means to redeem, citing that ga'al and pada means to redeem, which both words actually do. Yet we see an example in Nehemiah cited in my book also. And it says the following. And I said unto them, we have, after our ability, redeemed our brethren the Jews. See, anaknu quaninu, right here, redeemed. From this part right here, quaninu, quana, means to redeem. See, this is what we're talking about for edification purposes, brothers and sisters. Next slide. The Hebrew verbs. There are 7 stems in Hebrew verbs. They are qual, the simple active, nif'al, the simple passive, pl, causative at times, but more so the intensification of the qual, pu'al, the passive of the pl, the hif'il, the causative of the qual, the hof'al, the passive of the hif'il, the hipa'el, the reflexive of the verb. Next slide. Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, parse. והשיב כיודע והיה מצרים, בעניות בדרך אשר אמרתי לך, לא תוסיף עוד לראותה, והתמכרתם שם לאויביך לעבדים ולפקות ואין קונה. Now, why did I go here? Because there are those in the Facebook community who try to sit there and say, oh, certain of those Israelites who go over Hebrew don't deal with parsing. And I say this in due respect. Many of those who are staying on the parsing don't speak. I state again, many who are staying on the parsing don't speak Hebrew. So while you're saying those who are speaking Hebrew don't get into the parsing, those who speak Hebrew can say you're stuck on the parsing. See, parsing comes before when you're dealing with Hebrew, when you're learning, after, or should I say before speaking. See, those who promote parsing and stay at that aspect of parsing do not speak Hebrew. Whereas those who speak Hebrew speak it and are going into parsing of it. See the difference? Okay, so here is what we're looking at. Where Heshiv Ka, Heshiv, all right, from, as we stated before, this is the Hif'il verb stem, and this is the third person masculine singular. This Ka that you see here at the end, brothers and sisters, represents you. All right, it comes from the breakdown of the word Otka, which means you. Yod He Wah He, the Most High. Mitzrayim, the Mem, Zadeh Resh, Yod Mem. We explained this before. All right. Mazer means distress. Mitzrayim means distress intensified. Mitzrayim means the dual of such. As been pointed out inside of a video, because I did a presentation in which is called Rabbi Meza and the Black Israelites or something of that sort when you go through the channel, because he said, go to the Strong's Concordance and look up the word Mizraim, and that it means Egypt. Yet when we went into the word Mizraim inside the Strong's Concordance, it told you and I, brothers and sisters, that it means the dual of the word Matzer. And Matzer means distress, as we're going to go over. All right, so by aniyot, in the or with the aniyot is the plural of the word aniyah or oniyah, which means ship. All right. Then we have ba derek, which means in the or with the derek, which means way or path. Asher, which means that which is. All right. This is not asher meaning happy. This is asher meaning that which is. Amarati. Amar is the root word there meaning to say or to intend. The T at the end signifies it as the past tense first person masculine or feminine singular. Amorti means I said. Laka means to you. All right. This ka, as you see here, as we also see here, is the drop off from the word ot ka. We are parsing. Let's go in. Lo tosif. Lo means no or not. That is the negative aspect. All right. Tosif. All right. Hasif is the root of that. This tau that you see there shows it to be the future tense form of it, and it also signifies the third person feminine singular aspect. Okay, so or it can represent the second person masculine singular aspect, lotosif. Okay, because the third person feminine singular inside the future tense is the same word in all 7 stems as the second person masculine singular in the future tense in all 7 stems. All right, this part right here, old, which means another or again. All right, lir ota. This lamed signifies the 2 parts, showing it to be the verb inside of the infinitive. R'ot ta. All right. Ra'ah means to see. All right. So when you show it there, it's not little oha, it's little ota because the hey drops off and the tau, which represents another feminine letter in Hebrew, okay, shows it to be conjugated in that particular aspect, in that particular regard. This dagesh that you see inside of the hey, brothers and sisters, represents that whatever is being spoken of is feminine. So to see it, whatever that it is feminine. All right. Let's go on. Okay. Well, Makar 10, we expound upon this before. So let's move on. Sham means there. All right. Lo ebeaka, two or four, or ebeaka, to your enemies, from the Hebrew root word iyeb, which means enemy, which comes from the root word iyeb, which means to be adverse or to be at odds with. Or ebeaka, this ka doesn't represent you, it represents the word for your. All right. So this shows, brothers and sisters, that when you're showing the possessive of a noun, the possessive aspect is shown in Hebrew as its suffix. All right, so let's go on, continue in this particular regard. La abadim, because there are those who swear, those who speak, don't pause. So let's go into this. All right, la abadim, which means la means two or four. Hebrew class number 15, I get into that. Abadim, which means bondage or servants. It means bondage or servants. Beit Abadim, you still see the Abadim there. Beit Abadim, the house of servants or the house of bondage. Walish Fakot, all right. Shifka, brothers and sisters, means female servant, but it's not the root aspect of Amma. The word Amma means female servant. The Shifka is the kind of things that we saw Harriet Tubman was dealing with when they had her as a child sitting up there pulling things that the oxen would have been pulling. That's in part why I used that picture in the beginning. All right. So let's go on. What ain means and there is no one, there is not. In quone, quone we already expounded upon in this particular aspect. Quone from the root word quana, which means to bow, to redeem. When somebody tried to quote unquote check me, if you will, or quote unquote correct me, not that I am above correction, I have no problem with that. But if you're going to try to correct me on something, please listen to the entire video. Please look at the description to see if I caught my mistake and put it in there. Please read the comments to see if I caught my mistake and put it in there. Because there was a person who decided it was a good idea without listening to the entire video that I did and posted on Maccabees TV to try to quote unquote check me by saying the word quana doesn't mean to save. Meanwhile, I never said in any presentation, nor in the book that I wrote, that the word quana means to save. I said it means to redeem, it means to buy. It means to get, it means to possess. I never said it meant the word save. The word yasha means to save. The word hatzel from natzal means to save. So if you're going to try to check somebody in Hebrew, first off, know Hebrew. Second of all, listen to the entire thing. Because perhaps if I did make a mistake, I may have put it inside the description in the video. Because no man is perfect. But however, if you're trying to check somebody and you don't listen to the entire thing, you can make yourself having to say like that person had to say, oh, well, what I meant was, or what I should have done, or I'm sorry. You could prevent saying what I should have and sorry if you take time. Next slide. The Hebrew aspect. Why is this important? Well, since we are speaking of the Hebrew, it is important to get into the Hebrew. What would the Hebrews mean and think when they said Mizraim? Why would the Hebrews identify what is known as Egypt as the house of bondage? There are some who say that verses 20, pardon me, there are some who say verses 48 to 68 is about the Israelites and the Romans only. The Lord will cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. That shall go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them. And that shall be a horror to all the kingdoms of the earth. That's in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 26. And all these curses shall come upon thee and shall pursue thee and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou didst not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. So, brothers and sisters, you can't sit there and say this is only about the Israelites and the Romans only from verse 48 to verse 68, when the Israelites were being smitten before their enemies, who were the Romans in part. Because see, the part that you see right here, on the left-hand side is from Deuteronomy 28, verse 26. So if verse 48 to verse 68 is the part that's only about the Israelites to the Romans, how can we trace the prophecy in Deuteronomy 28, verse 26 to the Romans and the Israelites as well? Because somebody did not study. That's how. Let's go on. Deuteronomy 28 and Daniel chapter 9. And all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou didst not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. Daniel chapter 9, namely verse 11. Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, and have turned aside, so as not to hearken to thy voice. And so there have been poured out upon us the curse and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, for we have sinned against him. Brothers and sisters, if we are reading in Daniel chapter 9, which was during the era, brothers and sisters, of the Medo-Persian Empire, and it says that the stuff and the curses that's written in the law of Moses was already being poured out upon the house of Israel, how can you take any verse, namely in this case from verse 48 to verse 68, to say that's only about the Israelites and the Romans, when the curses already was happening while the Israelites were still under the Persian Empire, under the Persian hegemony? Next slide. Deuteronomy 28 and others. The Lord will bring thee and thy king, whom thou shalt set over thee, unto a nation that thou hast not known, thou nor thy fathers, and there thou shalt serve other gods, wood and stone. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all the peoples, whether the Lord shall lead thee away. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but they shall not be thine, for they shall go into captivity. Therefore shalt thou serve thy enemy, whom the Lord will send against thee, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he hath destroyed thee. I state again, if you don't serve the God that Deuteronomy 28 is talking about, Jewish and Christian, try not to use Deuteronomy 28 against those who are saying they're Israelites. Because when you read the Lord thy God, it's not talking about who the Jewish people pray to. It's not talking about who the Christians pray to. Understand who the Lord and Savior is according to the Israelite understanding, in order to be able to understand the writings of the Israelites when they speak of the Most High. Now, in Deuteronomy 28, we see all these verses here, such as the part that says to beget your sons and daughters, and the part that says serve thine enemy whom the Lord will send against thee, and hunger and thirst and nakedness. Brothers and sisters, it says also that all these curses shall come upon thee and shall pursue thee and overtake thee. So to try to trace it to only one aspect, you can't do that, brothers and sisters. You know what? And I don't mean to jump the gun. The people who say that Deuteronomy 28, verse 48 to verse 68 is only talking about the Israelites and the Romans, and the Israelites or the black people, perhaps in certain cases, who try to cite Munter, the Roman historian, as I've done a video on that, which I could put in the description here. You notice they never go over Deuteronomy 30 that says if you bethink yourself and return to the Lord thy God and keep his commandments, because they don't want the Israelites to return to the Lord their God. Because if the Israelites were to return to the Lord their God, you will not have any aspect standing up under Christianity, Judaism, or even so far as Kemetic or Islam. Because the Lord, the God of the house of Israel, the Lord God of the house of Israel, the Lord who is the God of the house of Israel, established Israel as his son. So that knocks out the idea of Christianity's only begotten son out the water. The Adoshem Elokeinu, not the Yod-Heh-Wah-Heh Eloheinu, that the Jewish man calls on, that's knocked out the water. You understand? So this is something we want to point out for edification purposes. If you cannot trace your people's history to this, it don't fit you. You can trace each verse in Deuteronomy 28 to what happened with us in history, immediate and in the past of aforetime. Next slide. Deuteronomy 28 and others. The Lord will make the pestilence cleave unto thee, until he has consumed thee from off the land, whither thou goest in to possess it. What's the pestilence? The nations, the plagues, to cleave unto thee, always being a bother. The nations always being a bother against the house of Israel. Whether thou goest in to possess it. So the land that they went to possess, what? They were going to be put out of that land by the pestilence. That's to say, in part the nations. And the Lord shall bring thee back into Egypt in ships, by the way whereof I said unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there you shall sell yourselves unto your enemies, for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. And the Lord shall bring thee back into Egypt in ships, by the way whereof I said unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there you shall sell yourselves unto your enemies, bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. And there you shall serve gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. So if you're making up names for your God, if your God has a birth date, brothers and sisters, if the name of your God has a birth date, it ain't the one who created the heavens and the earth. It is not the one who created the heavens and the earth. And therefore, it's not the one that Deuteronomy 28 is talking about. Next slide. Deuteronomy chapter 5 and chapter 4. I am the Lord thy God who brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me, such as the gods of wood and stone that don't eat, don't see, don't smell. But you have the Lord taken and brought forth out of the iron furnace out of Egypt, to be unto him a people of inheritance as ye are this day. So you can't sit there, Jewish man, Rabbi, and sit there and say, whoa, they only sit there and talk about that's the only verse you got out of the house of bondage. Egypt was the house of bondage, but because you were not the people that was in bondage, Jewish Khazars and so forth and so on, Ashkenazi and Sephardic alike, you can't relate to the Impera Papyrus. You can't relate to the Brooklyn Museum Papyrus 35.1446. You can't relate to Seneb TC and the aspect of Sobek Hotep III of Dynasty 13 of Egypt. You can't relate to the external references of the Israelites being enslaved in the land of Egypt, because once you get into that and you look in what they call the Middle Kingdom of Egypt and you go to the people who were captives, even shown in the Heck Museum, they look brown skinned with afros. So this is what we want to point out for edification purposes. The people that were brought up out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, did not look like the Ashkenaz, did not look like the Sephardic, did not look like the Mizrahi, did not look like the Samaritan Jews, or so forth and so on. They look more so, if you want to go there, more like the Falasha Jews. You understand? They look more so, if you want to go there, like the Indian black Jews that you see over by New Delhi in East India. And they look more so, if you want to go there, to the children of Israel laying claim to such in the Western Hemisphere. I could put that video up as well. All right. So this is something, brothers and sisters, we want to get into for edification purposes. Now, but you have the Lord, the Most High, taken and brought forth out of the iron furnace out of Egypt. So when we call Egypt the iron furnace, when we refer to Mizraim as the iron furnace, when we call Egypt the house of bondage, don't say it and wonder why we're doing that, because the ancestors of the Israelites did such. That's why we're doing it. But you want to go online, Rabbi Meza and others, and say, they just quote this one verse. Is that it? Well, how many verses do you need? Because you're asking us for a DNA swap to sit there and see if we have what they call the Cohen gene. Yet, when they did the DNA of what they say was the Cohen or the Levitical gene, it traced more back to people that live in Southern Africa than anywhere else on earth. So like I stated, it looks more so like the people opposite of the color of the Ashkenazi Jews. These are the things we want to point out for edification purposes, brothers and sisters. And we still then have to ask, where did you get that Cohen DNA from? Even then, it backfired on them because most of the people who had it are black. But you still got to ask, where did you get it from? So if you want to trust the DNA of what they call the Cohen gene, even when they tested people throughout the world, the majority of the people who had it were black in Southern Africa, in part called the Lemba, L-E-M-B-A. Look them up. You understand? This is something that we're talking about. So when you read about the scattering that Deuteronomy 28 is talking about, we can see from one of the earth to the other. So what are you talking about? It's only the Israelites and the Romans trying to end Israelite history with 70 AD. That ain't gonna work. Not as long as the Most High provides knowledge, wisdom, understanding, breath, and internet. So be it. Moreh Yeshiah, myself, blessed be the Most High, continue to do this. Let's go on. Hebrew Lexicon, page 651. Now, what you're looking at here on the left-hand side is the word zarar, all right? Which means to tie, to bind up, where you see the arrow at, all right? Hosea 4:19, to shut up, to be hostile to. In part, zorer, adversary, all right? In translation, or in transliteration, pardon me, to be straightened, distressed. Zorli, I am distressed. I am in a strait. I grieve. Said as Zor Li. All right? Zor, over here where the arrow is on the right-hand side. Adversary or enemy, distress or adversity. Let's go on. Hebrew Dictionary, page 261. Now, let's look at this here. Zor, Zur, to besiege, to bind, to wrap, to form, to persecute. Zor, Zorim. This right here, brothers and sisters, is what? The noun. Zor, masculine singular. Zorim, masculine plural. Adversary, distress. Isaiah chapter 3, verse 6 shows the word Zara translated as trouble. And it's Zara, meaning the land of trouble. Zor means adversary or enemy as shown. The mem or m as noted shows a matter to be a noun from a verb. This is how you get into the Hebrew, brothers and sisters. Let's go on. Jeremiah and the matter. Ko amar Yohewahe Elohei Yisrael. Hini mesib et kele hamil chama. Asher beyetkem. Asher atem nil kamim bam. Et melek babel. Wa et hakastim. Hazarim aleikem. Mikut lachoma. Wa asafti otam. El tokair hazot. Thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, behold, I will turn back the weapons of war that are in your hands, whereof you fight against the king of Babylon and against the Chaldeans that besiege. Hazarim. To besiege. Zar in root, Zur in root. This is a wow in the middle. In other words, it's an iron wow verb. So when you show it in the conjugation in the present tense, all right, the wow drops off in root, except when you show it in the aspect of the masculine plural, feminine plural. That's Hebrew for edification purposes. See, parsing doesn't get into that. All right, let's go on, brothers and sisters. History to be noted. Babylon came to power in 606 BCE under Nebuchadnezzar. Persia came to power in 539 BCE under Cyrus. Greece came to power in 331 BCE under Alex, meaning under Alexander. Rome came to power in 146 BC under Lucius. So we went over history, Hebrew, prophecy, and for edification purposes. Giving honor and praise unto the Most High, the Creator and the Maker of heaven and earth. Shalom. There will be a part 2.